A very warm welcome to this session. As you're aware that this is a session on vocabulary made easy. I guess you guys have been waiting for a session like this, isn't it? Right, people? All right, great. So I think Lakshya is the first one who said good evening, ma'am. All right, good evening, everybody. And I welcome you all to this free live session brought to you exclusively by TalentSprint. As you know that the topic that we're going to do today is vocabulary made easy, right? So vocabulary, the moment you think of this, I'm sure, you know, most of you feel petrified, you feel scared, right? Because the only fear that anybody has while doing a reading comprehension or while attempting independently asked questions is to be caught between a word which you do not know the meaning of, right? So keeping that in mind, I think today's session is certainly going to be useful as it is a free live session, public live session, in addition to the students who I can see have access to this. Of course, we have others also who've still not enrolled, but certainly have the privilege of watching this session live. For all of you who've joined in new, just to give you a brief overview of what we cover, we have a lot of videos which covers topics pertaining to question types like finding errors, like jumbles and blanks. You have reading comprehension and you have vocabulary, right? So these are the question types based on which we have videos. And in addition to this, you have a basic reference which takes care of grammar in detail, which helps you build a strong foundation to attempt all the questions pertaining to verbal ability, right? Now there's just one thing before we get started with the session. What I'm going to do is there's a screen, there's a couple of things that I've prepared for you. So we need not download any PDF or anything for this. The only thing that you have to watch out for is the technique that we're going to use to answer few questions. As you are aware that it is a 1 hour session and practically not possible to cover everything. So I will touch upon a couple of concepts which will give you an insight, because the students who are already a part of the curriculum, who already enrolled for a course, certainly know what we have. But for all those who are new, just for you to have an idea, how is it that enrolling for a course of your choice can help you, all right? And today, like a topic which most of the people dread, it is vocabulary that I chose to do, right? Okay, so now first and foremost, without taking much time, I'd just like to tell you, now vocabulary questions in the exam are asked in various patterns, right? One is when the questions either synonyms or antonyms are asked and there is no context, there is no passage which you can refer to even draw any sort of clue. Now, where questions are asked independently. Now, to attempt those questions, what you need to do is knowledge of root words comes handy. Also, an extended knowledge, an expanded knowledge of vocabulary also would help you answer questions where synonyms and antonyms are asked independently. The second type where you could be asked or tested on vocabulary is when there is a context, there is a line and there are blanks, right? And fill in the blanks. And you have to choose either one word which fits well in both the sentences, or the other type is where there are two blanks and you have to choose a pair of words which fits perfectly in the context. So in questions like these, you can always draw clues from certain words which are either before the blank or after the blank, right? So with the help of a few examples, we're going to understand that technique as well. The third variety that we have is how can we arrive at a meaning by taking hints from the sentence. Those hints can be in different forms. I'm going to discuss a couple of those as well. As I mentioned, we have all of this explained in detail with a lot more examples, exercises, tests, etc. But I'll just touch upon a few just for you to have an idea, and I hope that would help you. All right, so let's quickly get started without discussing more on the introduction. Let's get on with the types. All right. Right, great. So I hope you have no issues with regards to display and all. Like a couple of you were complaining of display not being clear. So I hope all of it is sorted out now for you, right? Cool. Okay. As you can all see, right, this question. Now, synonyms using context clues. This is one type that I wanted to discuss, synonyms using context clues, right? So in this particular question, if you see the first one, the debris on the stadium floor included numerous paper cups, ticket stubs, and cigarette butts. So the word that is highlighted is debris, and you have to identify or find the meaning of this particular word, right? How can we do that? Now here, as I told you, you have to use context clues. Now, what are context clues? When you talk of context clues, you say the debris on the stadium floor included numerous paper cups, ticket stubs, and cigarette butts, right? What does it mean? So none of these things are useful. If I would say none of these things are actually useful, right? Neither are paper cups useful, nor are ticket stubs useful. They're all a part of the junk, a part of the trash, right? So from the available options, from at least the examples, we can draw a hint that paper cups, ticket stubs, cigarette butts, they're all a part of the trash, right? Trash means something which is a waste. So the correct answer for this particular question, how did you use the context clue? You used the clues of the examples given, right? Numerous paper cups, ticket stubs. Now, what are ticket stubs here? Ticket stubs are those things, usually when there is an entry ticket, and to show that you've already bought a ticket and you've entered the stadium or the place where you've gone to attend the, I would say, the event. So just to understand that, right? So just to understand that you have already bought the ticket and you've already got it signed or selected, that okay, you cannot reuse the ticket or pass it on to another. So those things are called ticket stubs. All right. So that's how you find out clue. Get the context clue. Now let's look at the second one. After the heavy rains, the stream became murky. In fact, the water was so cloudy you couldn't see the bottom. Now, if you look at this example, after the heavy rains, right? Now, if you can just imagine, if you can just picturize this particular thing in your mind, the stream became murky. In fact is the clue word that's kind of telling you what exactly would this particular word mean. It will give you a clue to the meaning of this particular word, that is murky, right? The water was so cloudy you couldn't see the bottom. So you see that sometimes in the sentence itself, you will be able to get the answer to a question. So if you are to look for a synonym of the word murky, the answer, the fact that in fact, the moment you see in fact, the water was so cloudy, you couldn't see the bottom. So immediately you can say murky means, obviously it's not clear, it's not bottomless, the water was cloudy, which means it was not clean, it was cloudy, right? So this is the technique that you use to used to arrive at an answer using context clues. Okay, let's look at the third one. Although Alex usually looks unkempt, he had a very neat appearance at his job interview. Now, can you tell me which are the words, which are the clue words in this particular question? Can you very quickly tell me? Which are the clue words here? All right, that's right. Although, which tells you that, it shows contrast, right? Usually, what is Alex's usual look? Usual look is unkempt, and that's the word that you're looking for to find the meaning of, right? He had. Now, you are trying to draw a contrast to how he appeared at an interview, right? So a neat appearance. So from this and the presence of the word although, you can make out that generally Alex looks untidy, right? So neat appearance, or someone who's not so neat or untidy. Otherwise, he looked neat at his job interview. So from that, you can draw the clue to arrive at the answer, it cannot be orderly, it cannot be handsome, it has to be messy. And what is it that you used to derive the clue from? You used the contrast word although, and you contrasted it with neat appearance, right? So with that, you can arrive at the meaning messy. Let's look at the fourth one. The newlyweds agreed to be very frugal in their shopping because they wanted to save enough money to buy a house. Now, what are the clue words here, right? Tell me the clue words. Now, I'm sure you can arrive at the answer. Economical is absolutely right, says Surya Prakash. Economical is right. But let us understand the techniques, right? The main objective of this session is for you to have an idea how to use certain techniques to arrive at the answer. So newlyweds agreed to be very frugal in their shopping because they wanted to save money. Now, do you think that you can save money? Now, you're giving a reason, right? Why were they frugal in their shopping? Now, frugal here, do you think would mean extravagant expenses? No, because they wanted to save some money. That's a clue word, right? They wanted to save money. So obviously, their shopping has to be very economical. Absolutely right. Save enough money. Very good. I think Surya Prakash, Shalini, Murali Shankar, all of you have hit it right, right? Save is the key word. Very good. Let's move on. Right. Let's look at this. This is another type of question, right? This is another question type where you know that there are two blanks and you have to choose a word, a pair of words, in fact, which fits perfectly in the context. Let's look at the first one. To avoid dash, there is a need for dash planning of the project. To avoid cancellation, broad planning. To avoid cancellation, broad planning, problem deliberate, pitfalls, systematic. Now, to avoid dash, there is a need for dash planning of the project. Now, whenever there's a project, you know that there are different segments in a project, and there are, we have parts, and we have different people working on different segments. We have people working on different modules. So everything has to be systematic. If things are not systematic, it's likely that you may have a downfall. When you say you may have a downfall, means pitfalls, right? There could be a problem that that could probably catch you, or you may have a downfall on. So to avoid pitfalls, there is a need for systematic planning of the project. Let's look at the second one. Now, if you look at it, to avoid problem, a good management, to avoid problem, I think one of you says problem and deliberate, right? To avoid problem. Now, do you think there'll be just one problem? No, right? There will not be just one problem. So it cannot be singular. To avoid problems, to avoid issues. So that is why we rule out problem. That is why we rule out inconvenience. That is why we rule out cancellation. To avoid losses, there is need for temporary planning. If you do temporary planning, it's highly unlikely that you can avoid losses because you need to have a strong plan, right? Systematic plan. So this also logically does not fit, right? So the correct answer is answer 3, pitfalls and systematic. So this is another question type, how you can arrive at the correct answer, and not just, not just this is important, not just it's important for you to identify the clue words, but also eliminate certain responses which contextually do not apply. So that is also the meaning of context clues. Let's look at the second one. A good management will decide not only the dash for equipment, but also its dash for deciding priorities. Now, what is the key word here? Okay, you can get confused between a couple of words, right? There are a couple of options. You can say requirement for equipment, but also its necessities. We don't say necessities. Necessity for deciding priorities. That is understood. But necessities acts like a noun, right? Where you talk of things like air, food, water, etc. They are your basic necessities. So that's how we rule out this. Technology, methodology does not fit. Cost, value does not fit. Usefulness, utility does not fit. Need for equipment, but also its urgency. The key word is priorities. Okay, the key word is priorities. All right, so this is the keyword. This is the keyword approach. So because of priorities, you know, when there is something on priority, it has to be done urgently. So urgency for deciding priorities, right? But, okay, I think Meenakshi has this question. But is the keyword. Well, to tell you honestly, but also it's, right, which means not only but also, okay, not only just one for equipment, but also it's urgency for deciding priorities. There are two things. Because of priorities, things have to be done urgently, and of course need for equipment. All right, why methodology does not fit? Okay, we do not say technology for equipment, right? Certain equipments, technology is like a certain things, all the equipments which can be put under technology, right? Whatever we use is a part of technology. A good management will decide not only the technology for equipment, no, but also its methodology for deciding priorities. Now, again, methodology for deciding priorities. Now, we do not use methodology for deciding priorities. You use its urgency for deciding priorities, right? Whenever there are certain things that need to be done urgently. So that is why it's because of the word priorities, you can rule out methodology and technology. All right. Shubhendu, I hope it's clear to you now, right? Why is technology and methodology not right? Okay. Why not necessities? I said, but also it's necessity for deciding priorities. Now, necessity, when you say, when you talk of necessities, necessities means it's like a noun. You cannot use the noun form here, right? When you say necessity, it means need. Okay. But you cannot say necessities, because when you talk of necessities, it refers to things like the things which are necessary. Those are called necessities. So that form of the word is not correct. Okay. All right. Let's quickly move on. I think Kati Resan, I'm not sure what your name is, but which question do you want an explanation to, if you may? You know, because if you say, please explain again, there are a couple of things that I've already discussed. So if you have any doubt, you can always ask. And more than that, you know, all these live sessions that we do goes online, and you can always view it even after the session gets over. Okay, so you do not have to worry about missing something. But if you have a doubt, you can ask. All right, the second one. The second question, how can we rule out certain options? How can we eliminate certain options? A good management will decide not only the dash for equipment, but also its first, only when you buy. Another word is its dash for deciding priorities. You know, basically, whatever equipment you choose to buy, okay? So that it's dash for deciding priorities. That particular equipment should have the ability, you know, for deciding priorities. Basically, a good management will decide not only the dash for equipment, but also its urgency. Basically, when you're talking about that particular equipment, you know, which you buy or which you decide to buy, okay, and also to decide priorities means the urgency for deciding priorities. Because of the presence of the word priorities, we're using urgency. All right, I hope it's now clear to all of you. Okay, let's move on. Okay, now this is very interesting. This is something that I particularly wanted to discuss, because this is really going to benefit all of you. Now, if you notice this particular question, If you see the type 1, I'm calling it vocabulary using sentence hints, okay? Now, if you look at this particular example, Mozart gave his first public recital at the age of 6. By age 13, he had written symphonies and an operetta. He's justly called a child prodigy. Now, what does it mean? Let's say this particular sentence is given, these couple of sentences given. How would you understand what this means? Okay, so I'm not giving you any options here, but I want you to understand how to use sentence hints. All right, so let me discuss the first one for you first. Okay, as I just mentioned, the sentence, you have to find the meaning of the word prodigy. Okay, when you talk of prodigy, when you say a person who's written symphonies, you know, at that young age, it speaks of exceptional talent. It speaks of exceptional talent, right? So when you talk of exceptional talent, is somebody who is extremely talented. So the reason why I did not give you options here is, you know, because I wanted to discuss certain techniques. Now today's session is not to discuss a question paper, but to discuss certain techniques, like just to give you an idea of what and how we teach vocabulary on the site. You know, as I think one or two of you asked, like, does online learning help? Well, it certainly does, because first and foremost, you can access it 24/7 anytime from the comfort of your home. Secondly, you can access videos as many times as you want. It's not that one session is over, it is over. You can view it over and over again. So this particular question, just for example, prodigy, if you have to answer, if you have to find out the meaning of prodigy from the, from the particular example where you're talking about Mozart and who's actually written symphonies, etc. What does it talk of? It talks of somebody who's exceptionally talented. So that is how you derive hint from the sentence itself. That's one type where you can actually derive hints from the sentence, because those qualities that are being talked of, it's actually unlikely for a child of that age to do. So a child who's exceptionally talented can be called a child prodigy. Okay, so let's move on to the second one. So this is how you would arrive. So whatever options you may get in your exam, or even if it's a part of the passage and you do not know the meaning of it, you can actually derive clues from the sentences itself and arrive at the meaning. So when you talk of prodigy, what does prodigy mean? You know, somebody who's exceptionally talented. Exceptionally talented. Got it? So that is the meaning of prodigy. Right? Let's move on. So this is the other one that I wanted to discuss with you. Sometimes you can use your own experiences to figure out the definition of a word. Now let's look at this example. The cacophonous rattling made Maria cover her ears. Now this is pretty interesting actually. You know, if you were to just, if you just notice, why does it say type 2? You know, when I say you have to experience, you can use your experience to figure out the definition of a word. Cacophonous. Suppose you have to choose the meaning of the word cacophonous. Rattling made Maria cover her ears. Now tell me something. When you cover your ears, do you actually cover your ears when there's something very interesting? When there's something very interesting, do you cover your ears? We don't, right? We wish to listen to it more and more, isn't it? So basically, when you're talking of cacophony, cacophonous, something that's cacophonous, right? So first and foremost, why did I say it's something to do with experience, right? So generally when there's something not interesting, we shut our ears, isn't it? So basically something that's loud, that's unpleasant, we shut our ears. So some sound which is not so pleasant to the ears, that's not appealing to the ears, and it's pretty harsh and jarring, that kind of sound can be called cacophonous, right? Absolutely irritating sound, etc. So how did you get to know? So why did I call it the type 2? Because that's a type where, where you actually shutting your ears. So that's an experience. So from that, you can immediately make out, in case you did not know the meaning of cacophony, obviously you can use a little bit of logic. We will not shut the ears unless it is something unpleasant, right? So cacophonous is something that's, you know, a jarring, loud sound which is irritating. Loud, unpleasant sound. So the point that I'm trying to make here is sometimes from the sentence itself, you can derive hints. So I've just enlisted it into different types which you can use. All right? Okay, let's move on. The third type that I wanted to discuss with you. Now, if you can read it, right? Let's say the example that I've chosen for you is choose a periodical from the following: Time, Reader's Digest, etc. So the moment you see this question, right? Now, if you notice, the thing that I've written for you is sometimes there are examples given. There are examples for a new word. Suppose you did not know the meaning of the word periodical. You did not know what it means. You do not know what it means, right? The sentence, from the sentence, you cannot make out that periodical is a magazine, right? It's a reference to a magazine. You're not able to make out. But what is giving you the hint? It is the examples, right? So it is examples which actually give you the hint of certain words. Now here the word that is highlighted is periodical. Now if I say choose a periodical from the following, let's say this is a question and the highlighted word is periodical and you have to find out the meaning. So how will you know? But you know that Reader's Digest is a magazine, Time is a magazine which is published, you know, like fortnightly or monthly. So any magazine which is published at an interval, right, at a fixed interval is actually called or are actually called periodical. So that is how we use the clues. Either number one, like we discussed, from the word itself, from the sentence itself, and number two is where actions give you a hint to what the meaning could be, and the type 3 that we're just discussing is from the examples. All right, so from the examples you can actually make out that periodical refers to a magazine. Okay, let's move on. Type 4. Okay, now here the highlighted word is formidable. Okay, formidable. A formidable enemy is one to be feared. Now this is pretty interesting actually. Okay, when you look at an example like this, a formidable enemy is one to be feared. It's actually, you get the meaning from the sentence itself, right? So a formidable enemy is actually the one who's a fearful enemy or a dreadful enemy, because you wouldn't fear somebody who's interesting, isn't it? So sometimes if you did not even know the meaning to a word, you may, right? Sometimes if you did not know the meaning to a word, you may arrive at the meaning of that word from the sentence itself. So we may not have even thought of these because these are different techniques, right? Until now we've discussed, this was the type 1, right? Where the way it was told for a young child, you can easily make out that it is an exceptional talent. So you could immediately make out. The type 2 was actions, right? Type 2 was action, where you shut your ears only when something's uninteresting. And what's the type 3? We discussed periodical. Periodical are magazines which are published at a regular interval, right? Refers to magazines published at regular intervals. And what's the type 4 that we just discussed, right? Which is formidable. Now here, from formidable, you actually get the meaning from the sentence itself, right? When you say a formidable enemy is one to be feared, right? And the highlighted word is formidable. And the moment you read it, is a one to be feared. So you can immediately say a fearful or a dreadful enemy, right? Because you will not fear somebody who's pleasant. So formidable is someone who's fearful and dreadful. So that is how you actually use hints from the sentences itself to arrive at the meaning. Formidable is dreadful or fearful. All right. So that's also one of the techniques. All right, let's move on. Now, if you just read this, Jenny felt perturbed. That is, she was greatly annoyed by her sister's actions. Now, this is a very, very interesting question. Jenny felt perturbed. That is, she was greatly annoyed by her sister's actions. Now, here there are certain helping words. Can you tell me what are the helping words here? Right? Which are the helping words? Jenny felt perturbed. So let's quickly see which are the helping words. Greatly annoyed by her sister's actions. That is, okay, first is being annoyed. That is a helping word. And the other clue words, right, when you say that is, means you're already telling something that is annoying, something that's disturbing. She was greatly annoyed. So she felt what? She felt annoyed. So perturbed, in other words, could be disturbed or annoyed or not so happy about her sister's action. So that is a helping word. Okay. So other words that you can call as helping words when you use words like such as or also, is called as, etc. So when you say is called as or such as, the moment you say such as, is called as, these are all helping words, right? That is, so these are giving you hints, right? These three are actually giving you hints that you're greatly annoyed by a sister's actions. So this is how you can arrive. So if I were to ask you now, what is the meaning of perturbed? Perturbed is again greatly annoyed. Very good. I think Jyoti is answering, right? Abhilesh is also answering it perfectly. Very good. So you now know, I think you're just able to understand it. How can we use certain techniques to answer questions like these? All right. So we discussed parts, type 5. Okay. Type 5 we used when you say perturbed, right? Perturbed, what did it mean? Perturbed means something that's disturbing. And what gave you the clue? Greatly annoyed, right? Disturbed or annoyed. Perfect. All right. So these are certain techniques, right? So we've discussed 5 types, right? 5 types of, I would say, techniques to how we can use sentences as the hints. There's certainly more because we can use punctuation can also be a hint. Sometimes when we have a semicolon, sometimes when there is a colon, when there is a comma, even punctuations provide hints. Okay, so like this, I just took one example of each type, but these techniques will help you answer questions from comprehension, because the worst thing that can happen to you is to be caught with a word that you do not know the meaning of, be it in comprehension or closed passage. But I'm sure after having watched this session or having gone through this session, I'm sure you will be able to understand and use those techniques better. Let's quickly move on now. Another way, now this is, until now what we've discussed is, the first is, like you also, you have a choice of words. We are not discussing question types in this session. We're just discussing certain techniques to answer questions, okay, when there is a context and where there's no context. Now, when words or the meanings of words are asked independently, then knowledge of root words comes really handy. Okay, now root words again is not so easy to master. To tell you honestly, if you ask me, ma'am, give me the root word of this word, I may not be able to say it up front immediately because it is very difficult. It is an ocean. But again, you have to dive into it, right? The more you know, the better it is. Okay. So, okay, Akshay, in the last 10 minutes, I'm going to discuss how to increase vocabulary, how to improve vocabulary, and how to retain words. Okay. How to retain words so that you can use it more often. So that's what I'm going to discuss at the end of the session after discussing these few questions that I have for you. So now what I'm going to discuss with you is how to use prefixes, suffixes, and couple of 1 or 2 examples of how to use the root word method to arrive at a meaning. Right? Now, first and foremost, what is a root word? What is a root word? Right? So these questions are certainly clear, where we discussed how to use sentences as hints. Now we're going to discuss root words. Okay? Now, when do we use root words method? Now, although root words generally used, where you are required to answer questions where they're asked independently, right? Questions of synonyms or antonyms, right? So knowledge of root words, prefixes and suffixes certainly will help you. Root words, most of the root words have a Greek or Latin origin, as you all are aware of, right? So if I could just take some example, for example, let's say root word is acro, right? I've just taken an example. Let's say a root word acro. Now, acro is a root word that you know is of Greek origin, right? So again, as I said, the more you know, the better it is. But to tell you honestly, at the end, maybe in another 10 minutes, I'm going to discuss how to retain certain words, okay? Because it's important to retain. You may learn 10 words, but do you remember all the 10 tomorrow? The answer is no. So how often do you need to get back to the words? How often do you need to use the words to ensure that you remember is what I'm going to discuss a little later. All right. So let's say acro. Acro is actually, as I just said, it's a root word of Greek origin. It's a word of Greek origin. Root word, as I just mentioned, is actually the smallest unit or the base word. If you minus a particular word of the prefix or the suffix, the base word that is left is actually a root word, which generally is from Greek or Latin origin. Okay, so acro means height. Okay, acro means height. Okay, height or top position, etc. All right. So if we know the meaning of this, then let's say height or top. Okay, the ultimate. So if I say acrobat, okay, so someone who does stunts, somebody who does acrobatics is an acrobat. It's a noun, right? So a person who does a lot of stunts at heights, etc., is an acrobat. Then you talk of acrophobia, right? Phobia, we all know, means fear, right? So when you say somebody is acrophobic, it means somebody who is, scared of height, who's afraid of height, of something that's at a higher level. So those people are actually called acrophobics, right? So that's one way of arriving at a meaning. As I said, being a public live session and a 1-hour session, it's practically not possible to take many examples. The objective of this session is for you to understand how to approach, and I've just taken a couple of examples. All right, let me take one more for you. Let's say cumul. Okay, can anybody tell me what is the origin of this root word cumul? When you say cumul, what does it mean? And what is the origin, first and foremost? Is it a Latin word or a Greek origin? Cumul. What's the word that comes to your mind when you talk of cumul? Accumulate, right? Accumulate. Let's look at the words first. Accumulate, cumulative, right? So in all of this, you getting to see this word cumul, right? So if we know cumul, which for your information is of Latin origin, okay? So it is Latin, which actually means heap, okay? A lot together. When you say heap, right? When you say a heap of sand or a heap of hay, what does it mean? Everything together at one place, right? So again, accumulate. What does accumulate mean? Putting things together, right? What does cumulative mean? Summing up, as Vikram rightly mentioned. So this is how you use the technique of root words to arrive at the meanings. Okay, let's look at two more examples. Okay, before I talk of prefixes and suffixes and how can you use those techniques also to arrive at or choose the meaning of a particular word, right? Okay, let me take this one up. So I hope these two are clear to all of you, right? So let's move on. I have two more examples for you in this root words before I move on to prefix and suffix. Okay, let's look at Amy. Now, any idea or any word that comes to your mind if I write this root word Amy? Any word that strikes you immediately? Okay, guys, you have to participate. Okay, so Vikram, Surya Prakash, Shri, Sonia, and others also who were there. So you have to answer. Okay, amiable, very good. Lakshya says amiable. Okay, he's giving me words now. Amiable, amicable. What else? And perfect, right? So when you say Amy, okay, what is the meaning of Amy? Amy means love, okay, friendly, love. Okay, now when you say love and it is this particular word, Amy is actually a word of Latin origin. Okay, so when you look at amiable, amicable, what does it mean? Someone who's full of love, somebody who's friendly, right? So this is how you can use this technique. So here, where do you have it? Amy. Here also you have Amy. So these are all root words, which is the smallest form of a word, right? Okay, let's take one more example. I think I had a very simple, one more simple example that I have for you, ego. Okay, guys, I'm sure you can shoot me with a lot of words with ego. Ameliorate, very good. Ego. So when you know that that is the root word. So from the available options, you can actually choose, or in fact, if a particular word exists in a sentence, and of course in any paragraph, close passage, you do have context clues, but just in case you're unable to, then you must use this technique. Depends, actually. It's not that there is a fixed way that, okay, you must use this technique for independently asked question, you must use this technique for close passages. No. It's just that for close passages and reading comprehension, it's easier attempting those questions for the only reason you have clues to take help from, right? Perfect. Egotist, egocentric, egoism, very good, right? So, simple words, but what does ego mean? Egotism. What does ego mean? Self, very good. So, I've just taken some of the examples, just 4 of them for root words before I discuss prefixes and suffixes. So, again, when you talk of ego, what is the origin here? What is the origin of the word ego? Now, nobody is going to ask you in the exam what is the origin, right? But if you know the Latin and Greek origins, so it's certainly going to be handy, okay? So in this case, it's a Latin origin, all right? So you know something who's self-centered, somebody who's just thinking about himself, right? So when you say egomania, who's obsessed with self, that is egomania. Mania refers to something that's excessive, right? Madness. So ego, madness about self is egomania. So that is how you can use the technique, all right? Egotism. Right, guys, so let's quickly move on to how to use prefixes and suffixes, and then we're going to discuss how to remember words, okay? Okay, for prefixes and suffixes, first and foremost, you must remember that when you say prefix is something that precedes the root word or the base word or something that's added before, and suffixes after. Now, at this point, you must also remember that addition, by adding a suffix, you actually change the form of a word, right? Just to give you an example, for example, if I say dark, okay, it is a, and if I add NESS, darkness, what happens? What happens? Absolutely, I think Lakshya says it right, okay? The suffix changes the word form, changes its word form, right? Changes the part of the speech. If I say dark, you know, if something is dark, it's an adjective. It's a dark room, right? It's a dark hall. But darkness, if I add NESS, what happens? If I add NESS, what happens? It becomes a noun, okay? Dark, if I add NESS, what happens? Darkness, okay? If I say argue, okay, argue plus MENT, what happens? Argument, right? Bright plus NESS, brightness. Happy plus NESS. When you say ship, you know, when you say you ship a product, right? Ship plus ment becomes shipment, which becomes a noun. Okay, this also becomes a noun. Then we talked about happy. Happiness. Of course, spellings do not remain the same, but it changes the part of the speech. So I think Jyoti, happiness, you have to watch out for the spelling. All right, let's not talk too much about sadness. Sadness, yes, sadness. Happiness, happiness. All right. Okay. Talking about suffixes. This is how we've used suffixes. What happens when we add ly? What happens? When I say brave plus ly, what happens here? It becomes bravely, right? So bravely is what form of word? What is the part of speech? Bravely is an adverb, right? I think when I changed to an, you got it. No, I don't think so. I think you already knew it, right? So bravely is an adverb. The soldiers fought bravely, isn't it? So it's important. Okay, soldiers fought bravely. Then you talk of frank plus ly, frankly. The girl has a very frank behavior. Okay, I like her frankness. I like her frankness. She has a frank behavior or frank opinion, right? Frank plus ly. She speaks frankly, right? That changes to adverb. So this is how suffixes and prefixes change a word form, right? So again, I think Negi is asking a question. Suffix changes parts of speech, but how can I make out whether it's a noun or a part of speech, right? So a couple of things that you must remember, like these are the techniques. I've just given you a hint, right? These techniques have been discussed in detail in our learning platform, right? So for example, whenever you use MENT, TION, so all these things change the word form. Inform, information, right? TION. It changes to information is a noun form. So these things you have to remember. Okay. So let's take a couple of more also where now these are the suffixes that we've discussed. Let's take up something where we have prefix, right? ING, when you say, okay, now ING as a gerund, okay, it acts as a gerund which acts as a noun, right? Singing is my favorite hobby, or I like singing, right? So here singing is not the ing form as a verb, right? I think Vikram has a question and I'm glad that he asked. there's certain verb plus ing. I don't want to get too much into that detail, but verb plus ing form, it acts as a gerund, which becomes a gerund and acts like a noun, right? So singing is my favorite hobby, or I like reading. Okay, you don't say I am teaching. Okay, or if I say I like teaching, then it acts like a gerund. Okay, where you're taking teaching as a noun, the profession of teaching, which acts like a noun. All right, so that's when the ing form does not act as a present continuous, but acts like a gerund and hence a noun. I hope that answers your question, Vikram. Right, let's take up some examples of prefixes, and after that we're going to discuss just about 5 minutes about how to remember words. All right. All right. Let's take a few examples, like let's say anti. Okay. What is the meaning of anti? What is the meaning of anti? Anti means something that's against, right? Which works against something. It is a prefix, but it denotes opposition, against. You must have, of course, anti-terrorism, antidote, right? Let's say anti, and let's look at a word called antidote. Anti means against. So we know what is the meaning of antidote. Let's say we have a sentence, we have a theme, and from that, how can we make out? This is against or opposite, anti. Absolutely right, right? If we say antidote, what does it mean? Antidote is something that you give when a person, is probably when we fear somebody has poisoned himself. So there's something that we give as an antidote, which acts against the poison, right? So antivirus, absolutely. Antibody, very good. So these are a few things which act against, okay? So the prefix will also help you understand partly about what the meaning is, all right? Abhilesh has got the answer. Okay, let's take another example. Let's say this is one. Let me take up as auto. Okay, if I take this word auto, give me a few words with auto. Automatic, right? Automatic. Something else? Some other words? First one comes to me. Some other words with auto as a prefix? Automatic. Okay, Akshay and I are hitting the... Okay, so many people are thinking alike. Okay, autocratic. Okay, very good. Autotrophic. Autonomy. Very good. Excellent. I'm so glad that you guys are not taking it easy, right? I mean, I chose an easy word. That is why I immediately wrote automatic. A couple of you were with me, but I think some of you have it right. Absolutely right. Let's say you say automat, autocracy. What does it mean? What does the word auto means? Self, right? Again, auto means self. So there you go. All the meanings talk of it, right? How about the word autobiography, right? How about autobiography? When you write about yourself, right? So autobiography. So auto means self. Biography, of course, a document that you write about yourself. Okay, self. Very good. But honestly, no marks for automatic, right? That's an easy word. I think the others who came up with automobile, very good. Okay, which works on its own, right? It has a function, it has a motor, everything does its own role. Put together, it works, right? Automobile. So, very good. So, automobile. Let's look at a third example. Let's say this. Okay, this. This. What is the meaning of the word this? And think of words now. Think of words where this has been used as a prefix. Okay, I'll give you an example. You know, where you say yes, like you say something opposite again, not, meaning not or opposite or away. Okay, okay, disarm, displace, very good. Disarm. Excellent. You guys are coming up with amazing words. Okay. Disfigure. Okay. I know if a person chooses to eat a lot, very soon he'll be disfigured, right? So he'll go out of shape, blow out of proportion. Disjoint, disbelief. Excellent. So now you know. Dismantle. Now discard, to do away with something, right? Where dis as a prefix also gives you the meaning, that's something that you want to do away with. Okay, very good. So as a prefix, what you're using here, what is the meaning that you convey? Displace, disarm, disown. When I own something, you disown something, right? Disintegrate, integrate, putting together, disintegrate, separate. So again, those are a couple of words, right? Disapprove, dislike. Excellent. Right, guys. I think one last that I'd like to take. Ill. Okay, let's say ill. Where do you use ill? Again, giving the meaning of opposite. Okay, so you can use this technique whenever a word is given and you're required to choose from the available options. When you find IL, you know that it will mean the opposite. Something, if I say illogical, okay, illiterate, literate, illiterate, illogical, logical, illogical. You're actually giving the antonym, aren't you? So this is how, if you know the meanings of certain suffixes, what is it that they convey, certain prefixes, and you know what is it that it conveys, you may be able to eliminate a couple of responses or options. Okay, so again, disappointed. Okay, I hope you're not disappointed. I hope you like the session, Hema. Okay, because you're coming up with the word like disappointed. So if that is an example, fair enough, right? But I hope you like the session. So disappointed, ill, illegitimate, illusion, okay, which is not right, which is not true, right? Illusion, again, legible, illegible, right? Some handwriting, his handwriting is legible, or it's a legible document. It's a illegible handwriting, means something that you cannot read. So there you go. Okay, so I think illegal, couple of words that you just came up with, illegible, etc. Okay, so you saw how to use these techniques to arrive at the meaning. Okay, so we have an entire list on our website. Some of you who do not, who are the free users today, who have logged in for this particular session, just to let you know, we have every Wednesday 6 to 7 free exclusive live session that is hosted exclusively by TalentSprint for you all. And secondly, you can always take a look at our website, where what we discuss in this particular session is just a very small portion of what we have to offer, right? So because if it's vocabulary, it's huge. So we have an entire list of root words, prefixes, suffixes, and of course, a lot of tests to help you as and when the exam notifications are out. We have sessions where we discuss questions from the previous year's question paper, discuss certain strategies, how to attempt questions, right? So you can always visit our website to know more about it. I'll just make a mention of it. It is www.talentsprint.com/bank. I'll write it for you. www.talentsprint.com/bank. Okay. You can even dial us on our toll-free number, which is 1-800. It's a very interesting phone number, very easy to remember. So do not miss this opportunity. Do call us, right? 1-800-2000-916. All right. Site is www.talentsprint.com/bank and 1-800-2000-916. You can opt for a course of your choice, where you have options to choose for government exams, for bank exams, or even for both. So you can choose the course of your choice. Right, now, coming back to the last part that I wanted to discuss as a part of this session is how to remember words, right? There is no end to words. Believe me, when I was as old as you people, right, I'm at least a decade more than all of you, right? So when I was as young as you people, maybe the words was almost half than what it is now in the dictionary, right? So every time there are new words which are added to the dictionary, so there is no end to it. But the trick is, can we get around the meaning of a word? You may not know the meaning to every word, but can we get around the meaning of a word to at least understand the passage? Yes, certain techniques that we learned today will certainly help us. In addition to that, keep working on the root words. Now, when you remember, when you come across a new word, let's say today, okay, it is very important to use the word the very moment. Try to use the word in a sentence. Try to recollect the word once again. Within 24 hours, you have to use it again. All right? And then 3 days, 7 days, and then 1 month. Okay? So within 24 hours, after 3 days, then 7 days, and then again after a month. So now you may ask me, ma'am, is it really possible? Yes, it is. Adding, like learning 20 words and forgetting all of them the next day makes absolutely no sense. But remembering one word, using it, then again recollecting it each day, give yourself a target. Today I'm going to learn 3 words. I'm going to use all the 3 words within 24 hours, then after 3 days, after 7 days, and after a month. And you see for yourself how your vocabulary builds. All right. So, okay. Oh, there's a lot of information going on there, okay, about illustrious, etc. I think getting the meaning of a word when you have access to internet is not difficult. But when you're in an exam and you caught with a word that you do not know the meaning of, then it gets difficult. So I hope these techniques that you learned today, which was just a small part of what we actually teach our students who are enrolled with us. So where they understand there are more examples, right? And every time there's an exam notification and we conduct refresher sessions, we use those techniques to answer questions. Now, the last question that I can take up, okay, to improve spelling, any tips? Yes, practice and some more practice, right? Phonetics is very important. You should understand how certain letters sound. So that is very important for you to get your spellings right. Okay. So I think on that note, we can bring this session to an end. I hope you all enjoyed watching it. And that's something for you to visit. All our students who already have access and who have the privilege of learning from experts. Secondly, just to let you know, there are special offers which keep floating. So do not forget to visit our site and take advantage. So it's not just the learning, but it's a lot of money also that you save in the process. So grab the opportunity at the earliest. All right. So do look forward to more sessions which are hosted for you by TalentSprint. That is every Wednesday, 6 to 7. All right. Till then, keep practicing.